everyone. Thank you for joining us. This is Stacy Fisher with Options for Senior Living. We are so pleased and excited to announce this is our very first webinar. Thank you all so much for joining us. We appreciate your time and effort in being a part of this initial journey with us. I'm here today with Elaine Poker-Yount. Elaine works for Visiting Angels in the East Valley office. She provides education, outreach, support, and guidance to their clients. She graduated from the University of Wisconsin and has been serving seniors and baby boomers for the past 27 years. I happened to meet her when I first started in the senior industry about 8 years ago. And what drew me to Elaine was her compassion, her patience, and her true advocacy for her clients and their families. She goes above and beyond and always does what is in the best interest of the people she serves. Visiting Angels is lucky to have Elaine, and we are so blessed to have her here today to talk about the sandwich generation, a topic that is very relevant in most of our lives as working adults. Taking care of our parents, our children, and our families is a very real and personal struggle to many of us. It's a balancing act like no other. Elaine is here to share some helpful ideas for us all today. Please help me welcome Elaine Poker-Yount.
Oh, thank you, Stacy. I'm very pleased to be here. Thank you for having me. So my goal today is to give you some tools to ease any of the struggles if you are dealing with parents who are aging. I definitely want to walk you through some very tangible steps as you begin, or maybe you're in the middle of this journey. Over the last 27 years, I've had some great opportunity to watch a large number of seniors age over an 18-year period. So it gave me like a laboratory that I could use, and that has been very helpful in my position here with Visiting Angels. It is my observation. I used to say it was my theory, but I figured out I see it all the time. It's my observation that much of the reason aging and illness is so stressful is because we never really have a conversation about the nitty-gritties of everyday life or how we want it handled when. So we generally talk about the big stuff, you know, never put me on a feeding tube, don't prolong me by artificial means. But we don't really discuss the nitty-gritties of all those different things today. So with our families. So hopefully today my goal is to get you to think about something that you've never thought about before. My goal is to hopefully answer some questions that maybe, you know, have been needling you in the back of your mind. But if you can walk away from today with one action item that you can put into play to make your situation easier, I will be very happy.
That's wonderful. And you're going to help us address some of the facts and challenges that confront us all. Is that correct?
Absolutely. One of the things that we have to kind of get through and realize is that all of us at some point in our lives are going to be caregivers for someone other than just our children. It's inevitable. I say it's uncomfortable, and I put that to you. One of the things that I will do today is talk about so many different uncomfortable things. I look at it as my job, and it's really been beneficial for us to get people to be comfortable with the uncomfortable. Caring for someone other than our children is life-changing. It makes us view the world differently. It adjusts our lives for us in places we have absolutely no control. It can be very frustrating sometimes, but I will tell you, it can also be incredibly life-affirming and incredibly soul-filling.
That's great. So right now, Elaine has a little exercise for all of us.
So bear with me. We're going to be on the honor system here. I want everybody in the audience to close your eyes. And obviously, we're not going to know, but it works better when you close your eyes. Trust me. So as you close your eyes, I want you to go to your happy place, whatever that is for you. If it's a beach, if it's the mountains, a fishing boat, a casino, Hawaii, wherever it is for you, go to that place. And as you enjoy that moment in your happy place, I want you to think about if you feel any pain while you're there. Do you see a cast on your limb, any of your limbs? Do you maybe have a headache? How old are you in your happy place? And I'm not trying to make your happy place a downer. They're just questions. So now I want you to open your eyes. In our happy place, I would venture to say that most of us saw ourselves a little bit younger than we were, and everything was absolutely perfect and hunky-dory because it was our happy place. What's really important to think about or to remember is that when most of us see ourselves, we see ourselves as a younger version of ourselves. You know, in my head, I'm probably still closer to 26 or 28, and I'm many a year, 30 plus from that. But that doesn't go away. If somebody's 90 or 80 or 70, everybody sees themselves as some version of their younger self. And as we care for someone, we have to keep that in mind, because that perspective will make our job easier, and it will make it easier to understand why the people we love that we're taking care of do some of the things that they do. Our job as caretakers, facts and challenges, we have to look at safety first. That's what rules the roost. That's how we make decisions. That's what we need to look for in keeping our loved ones safe. But while we do that, it is absolutely imperative that we figure out how to balance keeping their dignity intact, because that's what's important to them. That really handsome guy in the mirror in the previous slide, he was productive. He had a business, he had a family and a home and a beautiful, successful life. And now things are changing, and he doesn't have all the capabilities that he once had. But that doesn't mean that we don't keep the dignity out of that equation. We want to keep that as often as possible. And that can really be a challenge sometimes. But I want you, hopefully, to always sort of remember this little scale, this little scale, and it's going to tip in both ways. The safety level is going to go down. I promise you, the dignity level will go up. Sometimes the safety level goes up and the other dignity goes down. And our goal is to figure out how to keep that pretty even.
That's wonderful. And Elaine, I know when we meet with clients at Options, and you probably do too at Visiting Angels, you find that they're not quite as prepared as they should be. And I know we always tell our clients it's so much better to be proactive than wait for a crisis, because at the time of a crisis, you don't always get the best opportunity or the best outcome when that happens.
Absolutely. The options become so limited. So we've got a top 5 here, top 5 list here. I'm a big David Letterman fan, so usually it's top 10, but we're on a shorter time frame. So I'm going to give you the top 5 things I think that will be helpful to you as you go forward, move forward, caring for parents. Number 1, role adjustment. In our lives, we all play many different roles. We are men, women, moms, dads, sister, brothers, grandma, grandpa, neighbor, friend, employer, employee, daughter, son, right? And in those roles, we're very successful because we stay within certain parameters and we don't cross those boundaries into the uncomfortable land. We know what buttons to push for our spouses and our kids to make them angry or uncomfortable. We know what we need to stay away from to keep things rocking and rolling very smoothly. And that's important, and that's why we have successful relationships. But when we get in a situation where we see that safety becoming not so safe anymore, when somebody is putting themselves, or they are in a situation where they're unsafe and at risk, we have to open our mouths and we have to say something, and that is going to be really uncomfortable. We're used to going to our parents for advice. We're not used to them coming to us for advice. It's a change in that role. The one place we all are very comfortable is going to our children for technology, right?
Very good.
Yeah, or our grandkids, because they're hip and we're not. Well, we've gotten to a point where they may be coming to us even for financial matters, which was totally not something they ever discussed with us. So getting used to the idea that you are going to have to say no or yes when they're thinking the answer is opposite is really important. Because if you agree with them at a time that's very crucial that you shouldn't, and they get in a rough spot, you've got to live with that choice. And that is extremely difficult. I see the fallout of that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
All right, number 2, having the conversation. what's the conversation? You know, I compare it to having that conversation about sex with our kids. When do we have it? Is it too soon? Is it too late? Are we in the middle of it? Are you going to do it? Am I going to do it? We just have to do it as proactively as possible, because when we make choices and when we plan ahead for how we want it handled, we have choices. And if we wait till that disaster that Stacy spoke about, we literally often have no choice at all. Our choices become very limited. So how do we know when it's time to give up driving? When your dog has that look on its face. So looking at that piece, that is the hardest question for anybody to deal with. So I ask you, think about it right now. If I said we had to take your keys away from you starting tomorrow, and there wasn't a 6-week limitation because you were getting a cast off in 6 weeks, because it would be forever, do you not feel a little piece of panic in the pit of your stomach? Absolutely. That's our independence. Well, when we have to have that conversation with parents because we're seeing dings in the car, because the garage door has some scrapes on it, or because I won't put my kids in the car in there and feel like they're safe, that is very awkward. Sometimes they realize it. My dad very simply gave over his keys when someone hit his car. He felt he lost his edge at age 88, and it was simple. But it's not always that easy, and families play hide the keys or, you know, take the air out of the tires, whatever that piece is. If you have parents that are still driving and doing well, pose that question to them now. I know we're not there yet, but how do you want it handled when you can't drive anymore? Are you going to trust that we're making a good decision for you if you don't know? Let's talk about that. So other conversations that kind of fall into that line also is about leaving home. Are they amenable to independent or assisted living? Many people say, I never want to leave my house. And that's great if they can afford 24/7 care from us or any home care agency. That falls into the realm of $15,000, $16,000 a month.
Right. It can be very expensive.
Yep. Or maybe they say, never want to leave my home, but you can't bring somebody in. Well, now there's a disconnect, you know, how are we going to do it if somebody else isn't there? Those are conversations we need to hammer out while they've got the wherewithal to be able to do it, so we know. That stress comes from us making decisions about their life, hoping that we're doing the right thing for them. And sometimes when they're arguing with you about it, they're not knowing what's best for them, so you're not arguing a reasonable situation. There is going to come a point where you are no longer the best option. Someone wants you to promise, please promise me I can stay home. Yep, I can promise you that with these 2 caveats. I can promise you that if I'm still capable of taking care of you and if you're still able to be safe. But when those 2 aren't options, then I can't promise you that you'll stay home alone anymore. And if you give those 2 caveats, you'll never be in that guilt-ridden state that said, oh my gosh, I promised and we just can't do this anymore.
Right. And always remember too, when you're talking to your mom and dad, all of these things take away part of their independence. And so it's so important to have compassion and to put yourself in their position, because we know how hard it would be for our independence to be taken away, even for a short time. But like you said earlier, this is for the rest of their life. So this will be a very difficult time for them.
Yeah. Okay, number 3, we are going to become their advocate. We need to become their health body. You know, we all go to the doctor all by ourselves and we do well, but even in our healthiest state, oftentimes I can't come home and recap everything that went on at the doctor's office, even if I'm there with, you know, my kids trying to tell my husband. We lose some of the details as we come home. So when we're dealing with some memory loss, some hearing loss, when we're dealing with medications that need to be dealt with, we need to be going to doctor appointments with our parents, and even getting them to agree to that sometimes is not easy. And we're not stripping their dignity, but we just want to be an extra set of eyes and an extra set of ears and an extra note taker. One of the greatest things that you can do for your parents or somebody you're taking care for is making sure that you are aware of their medications, and have them use Medicet, so that little Sunday, Monday, Tuesday case, so that it's very easy to see if they're taking those medications. We should have copies of their medications in our wallets and purses, so that if there's an emergency, we've got it. They should keep those medications and lists in their purse and wallets, as well as on their fridge. So if 911 walks in the door, they know what they've got, because the biggest help to a hospital is knowing what medications you are on, so that they can treat you as effectively as possible. But if you're not there, we need to look at the best friend. We need to look at the neighbor. We need to look at the spouse. You know, who is in their circle? If you are far away, come and spend a few days or a week. Find out who's in their circle. Get the names, the phone numbers. Share your names and phone numbers, so that you have access to what's going on with them. You may hire out. Visiting Angels does that. We will go to doctor appointments. We will take notes. We will email the information to families. We do all those we help families with activities of daily living. But being as proactive as you can to make the safety of the environment where they live good. Things like personal alert buttons. If somebody's home alone, a personal alert button is great, so that if they fall down, we don't always have our cell phone with us. And not everybody uses a cell phone. If somebody is the spouse of someone who has dementia, that person with dementia can't always call 911 or remember where the phone is or how to use it. Getting adaptive equipment in the house, especially in the bathroom, safety bars, non-skid flooring or non-skid mats, shower seats, toilet risers, so that we can get up comfortably with handlebars and not risk falling down. Those grab bars, so that we're not grabbing towel racks. Putting good lighting in the hallways and the doorways, and having night lights for people who get up to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night. A lot of those simple things can make all the difference in the world in keeping somebody safe in their home longer.
Yeah, they sure can. And I know when we meet with families, and I'm sure you do too, Elaine, we find that they're not always prepared as we would hope they could be. Can you go over some of the things that they need to make sure that every single person, our age or a senior, needs to have?
Absolutely. Legal documents are so important. And most everybody has them, I find, but probably 60 to 70% of our clients haven't looked at them in 10, 20, 30 years. So it's quite different then to now, and they are in the state of Arizona. So if those documents came from another state, we have a lot of people who've relocated here. We need to make sure that those documents are fitting for the state of Arizona and for fitting now. That the people that you have listed there are still capable of being your decision makers. That they have the health, that they're close enough to be able to do it. A lot of times we find people, are deceased, etc. But our financial power of attorney is somebody who's going to help with financial matters, close accounts, change addresses, change the phone line. And that's great. Sometimes we have two people do it, but even these days, we need to make sure people know our passwords. We have so many things on computer that, as well as, finding out where all that information is and where the documents are, passwords are a big part of that these days. But we need to make a booklet. You need to get a system in place, a binder or something, so that everything's in one place. Even on the medications, knowing allergies and putting that in the notebook, putting the doctors in the notebook. Medical power of attorney is who's going to make those healthcare decisions for you if you become incapacitated and unable to make decisions for yourself. Maybe it's temporarily because you were in a car accident or you're having surgery and something gets complicated, or maybe it's because there's some long debilitating disease that you no longer have the wherewithal to be able to make that decision. Arizona is the only state that has something called mental health power of attorney, and that allows you to place your loved one in a level 1 behavioral health facility without petitioning the court. That would come into play specifically for people with anywhere on that spectrum of mental illness, whether it be bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, severe depression, to name a few, but even some mid to late dementia or Alzheimer's. People can really have their behaviors change very erratically. It could have a lot to do with the medications they're taking, and sometimes they need to be hospitalized to be able to manage those medications. Our advanced, and in all cases, it's always best to use an attorney. It may be more expensive, but you get a more detailed profile, and if you have assets of any kind, you will always typically save money with an attorney. But there are a lot of people that don't have those assets, and they don't have anybody that's going to fight over what they have. There are documents, powers of attorney documents on the Attorney General's website for most states, but certainly for the state of Arizona. And even if you don't have a computer, the library will pull it up for you. Advanced directives, how do we want our care to be if we can't make that decision? We get to outline how we want it handled. And if you don't have that in place, the hospital will do that. If you get admitted, they'll give you those documents to fill out if you have the ability to do that. You can also get those documents from the Secretary of State's office, their website, for free. And again, libraries have that. So that living will. Another form of advanced directive is a DNR, a do not resuscitate. I don't have that down here. But a lot of people say, oh, I don't want to be resuscitated. That, and that's in my living will. That only works when you're in the hospital if they have those papers. If you are at end of life, if you are old and, aging to a point where you're tired and you're kind of done, that DNR comes into play. Only if you're breathing or your heart stops. But you have to have an orange piece of paper in the state of Arizona. You can get it from your doctor, and it needs to be on the fridge so that the emergency responders will see it. And then lastly, our HIPAA forms. HIPAA are the privacy forms: Health Insurance Privacy, Portability, and Accountability Act. And that allows us to share our information doctor to doctor, and that also allows the doctors to know who in our families we can give information to should something to happen to you. We typically only do our spouses, but we need to have a little chain below there because typically we're in the car with our spouses or we're together. So we need to put 2 or 3 people because there's nothing worse than when a family gets to a hospital and nobody will talk to them. Typically if we can show proof of being a spouse, we can, but often with children, we've had to be intermediaries where we're sharing the information because we've signed those HIPAA forms with families, with our clients. So really important to know. Lastly, we're going to look at how do you know when it's time to bring in some help, whatever that help is. Certainly, we've got some physical or mental decline in health from age. Maybe we have an illness and it's just kind of taking its toll. Sometimes we get some memory loss just from having a long-term illness. Chemo brain even can really play with us, especially when we're older, and that's very hard in the forgetfulness department. Post-surgery or procedure, if you have somebody with you the first 3 days when you get out of the hospital, it reduces your chances of going back in for that same issue by 60%. So, thinking about, a lot of times our loved ones go to the hospital and we just leave them there, and then they come home on their own and they get these discharge packets that are 20 pages long with information. We need somebody there to kind of read and be their advocate and follow up with the doctors and read what happens with the medication. Desired functions aren't getting done. What is a desired function? So start thinking about, when I tell you these things, you go visit mom and she's still in her jammies at 2 in the afternoon. Is that a problem? No, not really. I don't see why, except is it different from who mom is? Was she somebody once who put on makeup and had a beautiful hairdo every day, and now that's no longer the case? Is, your dad wearing the same shirt 3 days in a row and it's got no new spots every day? Maybe a once beautiful household is now kind of messy. Again, those aren't serious changes that we know of, but we're seeing change. And a lot of times we don't pay attention to that in succession with one another. We kind of justify why that is. We kind of rationalize here and there, but when somebody takes a fall or something goes wrong, all of a sudden, all those pieces of the string start blowing together and oh my goodness, why didn't I pay attention to the signs? So look at that, pay attention. It's when the basic functions that aren't getting done that you've got problems and you really have to intervene now. And those basic functions are if somebody's not eating, they're not sleeping, they're not taking their medications, they're not feeding their pet, maybe the bills are piling up, electricity goes out, pretty common, very, very common. So when you see that stuff happening, you've got to take action. We can't really pussyfoot around anymore. We have to make a decision that we have to change something so that their environment is safe. Sometimes there are too many doctor appointments. Are you getting calls 2 and 3 times a week to leave work, or maybe 2 and 3 times a day to answer questions? If that's the case, we might need to bring somebody in. And that goes back to looking at that circle. Who in their circle can be a help, or do we have to hire in? Services like Visiting Angels, again, we help with all the activities of daily living. We take people to the doctor, we prepare meals, we help people bathe, we help people with incontinence care, light housekeeping, changing the sheets on the bed. If those are all things that you're doing and somebody else does them, then you get to increase your quality of time with them. Activities being missed, social activities. Biggest reason people start to withdraw is they can't hear. Or they can't remember names. So a lot of groups are starting to have people wear name tags, which is great. So looking at those things and asking why. Don't just assume it's okay. Maybe go with them and see what's happening, see what you can observe. You may notice an increase in alertness. You haven't been there in a few days or even a week and they're not responding. Maybe they're not like making eye contact, or you're just getting a yes and no. And after about 20 minutes, you're beginning to see some change. And then all of a sudden they're interacting. That's because they've been isolated, and we need that human interaction to thrive. So if you're noticing that, it's time to get somebody else in there. And when your time spent becoming a chore is becoming a chore, then we need to get some help in, because they can read your body language. They can, even people with very late stage dementia, they can still read emotion. So when they hear the tone of our voice, they see the slump of our shoulders, they hear the edge in our voice, they know what's going on, and that's maybe when we need to get a little help for us too. These are emotional situations for everybody, caregiver, care receiver, and it's important for you to realize and sort of validate the fact that it's okay for me to be emotional. This is change and it's different, and I'm needing to adapt. One of the things that, I kind of put to you is attitude is everything. When we do something with a positive attitude, the time goes faster, the task gets easier, we break it down into different pieces. If you look at your caregiving situation and you tackle it like you would a task, instead of just assuming it's going to weave into your day, you will become more successful because your expectations will be more in line with reality. Give yourself time frames. Put the to-do list on your calendar. Don't wish away. If you don't put them down thinking, well, maybe they won't happen today, prepare your day for the worst and be surprised with the better. But getting your expectation in line can make a big help in helping you navigate a lot of the difficulties that you're dealing with. So this is just a little wrap up here. You have anything you want to add?
I think all of the things you've said are great topics, and they really make you think. I think when you were talking about before about the signs and what you're looking for, I would love to add to that, and just remember, for those people that are their parents are out of town, oh my gosh, it's so important when mom or dad start kind of making excuses for the other one too, and trying to protect them. Oh, dad's fine, dad, if dad's not able to come to the phone ever, he's probably not fine. And missing those social engagements, it is hard, because not only with the hearing or the remembering, there could be a little dementia or something that they're not able to walk like they used to. Embarrassment comes along with that too. I just think you gave us a lot of food for thought today, and I think everything, is so important to listen to and really take to heart.
That is one of the hardest things for me to hear when I walk into a family situation. Mom kept telling me Dad was bad, or Mom kept telling me, and every time we got there, he was great because he kind of rose to the occasion. And now we're here dealing with it, and they just feel so much guilt that they didn't listen to her. So I bring that up for a good reason.
Yeah.
So I think we covered pretty much everything. Are there any questions?
We did have one question, Elaine, from Carol, that it would be very helpful if we could email the presentation, which I would assume everyone would like a copy of that, so we can get that out to the participants that registered for sure.
Sure, that's no problem at all.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, we really want to thank Elaine, Poker-Yount from Visiting Angels, for stopping and talking with us today. Thank you so much, Elaine. It was so wonderful. There was so much information covered. This is only the tip of the iceberg on what Elaine talks about. She does lecture series around the Valley. She really is an advocate for the baby boomers and seniors all over Phoenix, Arizona. And so if you'd like more information on different topics she covers too, we can help you get that information, but we're just honored to have her here today.
Thank you so much. It's been my pleasure. I appreciate it.
All right. Have a good night, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.